Well, welcome back to the launch pad. My name is Zach, and here at the pad we cover everything space, space flight, space engineering, and the future of space, and this is our weekly update, the launch pad news. Before we get into it, make sure you've hit the subscribe button for our channel so you never miss a new weekly update, live broadcast, or our new series coming out next month, taking a deeper dive into new up-and-coming aerospace companies. Also take a moment, hit the like button. It really does help our video reach more people and share this incredible journey of space. This week we're going to be talking about Starship, Starlink, the NASA calendar for 2021 all the way into 2024, and more, so let's get right into it. Yesterday we saw the launch of Starlink 19 from Slick 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The Falcon 9 Block 5 booster B1059 lifted off at 3:59 UTC or 10:59 p.m. Eastern. This was only the third time SpaceX had launched a Falcon 9 for a sixth mission. From liftoff through the operations of the first and second stage, we saw a successful launch of Starlink 19 and a successful deployment of 60 more Starlink satellites. SpaceX now has over 120 satellites working their way into their final positions before commencing operation. The mission is a success, but unfortunately we did see a failure in the recovery of the booster. Following shutdown of the entry burn, we saw a lot of flames coming up the side of the booster, almost like one of the engines didn't shut down. Though a couple of minutes later, we did see the camera turn on from the drone ship, and SpaceX showed us the live view from, of course, I Still Love You. But moments later, we saw a large, dark orange sky, and then darkness quickly was restored. No booster was seen landing on the drone ship, and shortly later, SpaceX confirmed that the booster missed the ship and was destroyed. Many have believed and joked that booster 1059 sacrificed itself to save the birds that were on the deck of course, I Still Love You, but we'll just have to wait and see what SpaceX says was the reason. If SpaceX had had a successful landing, this would have set a new record for them with 25 consecutive successful landings, but for now the record will sit at 24 and the successful landing counter will be reset to 0 and quickly start counting back up later this month. When the Falcon 9 was designed, SpaceX had always predicted that some of these would be lost during the recovery portion, especially when recovering out at sea. There are so many variables of not only the rocket being in the right place, but the drone ship, the waves, the wind, a lot goes into it. This launch in every way was a success. The payload was delivered to orbit, it successfully launched that, and we've just been so used to seeing so many successful landings that when failures do occur, they're surprising. But SpaceX has plans in place should this happen, and they have many other boosters ready to go, both reused and new, that they are going to be putting into operation. Earlier this week, SpaceX also announced that Starlink is now available globally. Anyone can go online and apply for service. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get it right away. With just over 1,000 satellites currently in orbit and in operation, the high altitudes around the planet are now fully covered with at least basic Starlink coverage. But once we get to Starlink Mission 24, SpaceX will have achieved a full global coverage using their V1 version of the Starlink satellite. Now, Starlink service is being awarded on a first-come, first-served basis, but also by region. So if you apply and your neighbor apply, probably not both of you are going to get it at the same time. A survey took place last week in the United States, and it showed that over 60 million Americans would like to consider and adapt having Starlink as their internet provider. So this is just the beginning of SpaceX with Starlink, and SpaceX has said that they have already confirmed that they have passed 10,000 active users, so they're just getting going. In the end, SpaceX has the plan to launch over 40,000 more satellites, not of just the version 1, but of updated versions. Right now, that would take over 650 Falcon 9 launches, so many, many years. But once Starship is up and running, some of those first flights of cargo that we see to prove the reliability of Starship will most likely be Starlink launches. Once Starship is in operation, they will only need to do about 100 Starship launches of Starlink, as each Starship can hold 4 Starlink satellites. If you're curious to know more about Starlink, how it works, and if it's available in your region currently, or to sign up to be notified when it is, head over to starlink.com. And just like last week, Starlink 17 is still sitting on the pad as its launch keeps getting delayed. We had optimism that it was going to be tonight, then tomorrow, then Friday, and now there's no date listed for it. There's still currently no new date announced. Starlink 17 is stacked on top of the Falcon 9 Block 5 booster B1049. When Starlink 17 finally launches, this will only be the second time that SpaceX has reused a booster for an 8th mission. So many are assuming that there's something going on with the booster, and SpaceX is just taking this extra time to make sure that they have a successful launch. Well, Mars Madness has officially begun as the UAE and China have arrived in orbit. The UAE and both China have released their first photos and videos from their satellites as they have entered the Mars orbit. China will deploy its rover later on. And the big story we're going to be covering for Mars Madness for 2021 is the landing of the Perseverance NASA rover. Perseverance is going to go through what's called the 7 Minutes of Terror tomorrow, so make sure to come back here live on the launch pad. We'll bring you coverage of the landing of Perseverance. We're going to go deeper into the mission, what it's going to go through tomorrow, and what NASA is hoping to do with the Perseverance rover for the years to come. But the biggest news that's come out actually came out just hours ago, and that was NASA releasing some of its planning calendar for 2021 through 2024. And there's a lot of exciting missions in the not-so-distant future, so we're going to take a few minutes here and take a deep dive into what's coming up over the next few years. Currently on station is SpaceX Crew 1. Their mission is expected to conclude about the end of April. On April 20th, 2021, Crew 2 is scheduled to launch. Now, the interesting part to all of this is how many people will be at the station at the same time. And I'm going to say it right from the beginning, we do not have a final schedule on this. This is just looking at all the schedules of launches and splashdowns that are currently planned. Space changes quite often, launches change all the time, so this is what's looking like now. But with the way everything's planned out, it is possible that we may see 3 or 4 capsules arriving and departing at the station within just days of each other, if not hours. In March, dates will be ironed out more, but currently, right now, there are 7 astronauts on station. There are another 7 already on the docket to be sent up in April. We know 2 Dragon capsules can be attached at the same time, so it's unlikely, but it is possible that we might see station get pushed forward again and have 10 or 11 astronauts on board at the same time. Now, when Crew 1 arrived on the station, we did see that one of the astronauts had to stay in the Dragon until another bed was sent up because it had been delayed from an earlier cargo mission. So it is possible that you could see 1, 2, or 3 maybe even stay in the Dragon. You have to remember, they could be in the Dragon for multiple days prior to getting to station, and with Inspiration 4, we're going to see 4 people for 4 to 5 days inside a Crew Dragon, and they're not docking anywhere. In April, we will see the conclusion of Expedition 63's mission and the beginning of Expedition 64. Now, back on the calendar, we have seen SpaceX Crew 3 will be launching this September, Crew 4 in February of 2022, Crew 5 in August, and then Crew 6 all the way out in February 2023. Now, in 2021 and into 2022, we're really going to see the final testing and the beginning of operation of a 3rd capsule option going to the International Space Station, and this will be from Boeing, with Boeing Starliner, another U.S. capsule. Currently, Boeing Starliner's 2nd flight test is scheduled for the 25th of March, and then the first crewed test flight of the Starliner will be taking place this September. If everything goes to plan, the first official crewed mission will take place in 1 year in February of 2022. At this time, either SpaceX's Crew 4 mission that's also scheduled for February, or the Starliner Crew 1 mission will take place, and the other will have to be rescheduled. Starliner's Crew 2 mission is scheduled for April, Crew 3 in December, and yeah, the International Space Station is really just starting to get really busy, which is exciting to see, as for over a decade, Soyuz was really the only option to get there. Also announced were a number of SpaceX CRS missions, which are cargo missions launched from the United States, as an option other than the Soyuz cargo missions. Now, on the calendar, we also saw 2 other really big historic launches. First is the launch of the James Webb Telescope, which is scheduling October 30th, 2021 for liftoff. The James Webb Telescope is the most powerful and complete space telescope that has ever been developed and built, and is getting prepared for launch. It'll play a major role in us understanding the universe we live in and our place within it. Final tests are currently underway, and preparations are being made to move the telescope to the pad to prepare for its launch later this year. We'll be having a video coming out in the next few weeks that's going to dive deeper into everything about the James Webb Telescope, so make sure you subscribe to stay up to date when that video comes out. The other historic launch on the calendar is Artemis 1, and this will be the start of humanity's return to the moon. Should testing of the Space Launch System, SLS, go as planned and remain on schedule, which we've already seen one delay from the failed static fire test of the center core, Artemis 1 is targeting liftoff of October this year, 2021. Should everything go successfully with that mission, Artemis 2 will come about 2 years later, as NASA will need to build an entirely new rocket, as currently they're only developing one for testing. And then Artemis 3 will take place in September 24. Now, Artemis 2 and 3 are probably something you want to mark down on your calendar or flag on somewhere so you remember to stay up to date on them, because Artemis 2 is when we're going back to the moon. During the Artemis 2 mission, the Orion spacecraft will launch on SLS and will perform the first crewed mission to the moon since 1972. This mission will be a flyby test and will have 4 astronauts on board, 3 Americans and 1 Canadian. The Canadian being the first astronaut to go somewhere other than the International Space Station, which as a Canadian, I'm super excited to see on top of us going back to the moon. But this time we're going to the moon and we're going to stay. With the success of Artemis 2, it'll lay the foundation and everything will move forward for the launch of Artemis 3, which is really when humanity will return to the moon and land. During this mission, the new space station, the Gateway Station, will be in lunar orbit and will be put into use. The Gateway Station is currently under development, and the first 2 station modules are in construction phases, and they were just announced that they will be launched on a SpaceX Falcon Heavy at the same time in an extended fairing. Now, a lot of details of this mission will change and how it'll all operate, but this is the current plans. During the Artemis 3 mission, 2 of the astronauts will stay up in orbit and 2 will descend to the lunar surface. They will stay on the lunar surface for about 6.5 days, complete 4 EVAs, and a bunch of experiments in the lunar lander. During this time, we are also expected to see the first woman step foot on the moon. Currently, Artemis 3 is planned to land on the moon's south polar region, and the full mission from launch to splashdown will take approximately 30 days. Now, the lunar lander has not been finalized, as 3 companies are currently competing in developing lander options. Later this year, NASA will do their evaluations and make this selection. Currently, it's between the SpaceX Lunar Starship model, the Blue Origin Integrated Lander Vehicle, and Dynetics ALPACA. Now, there's a lot of stuff happening, and I know that was a lot of information. There was a bunch of other announcements on the calendar as well, and this is just the beginning. Space is really getting busy, but if you have any questions, let me know over in the comments. I will be answering those for you, and if I can't answer them all there, we'll bring them back here next week. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening over the next couple of years with the new space station, new rockets, new landers, new space vehicles, and so much more. It's a lot of information, but make sure you subscribe here to the channel, as I will strive to keep you up to date with everything happening in the space industry. Now, we've taken a look forward years into the future. Let's pull it back and take a look at what's coming up in the next 7 to 10 days. We're currently still awaiting that launch of Starlink 17, but on February 25th, Starlink 20, the 3rd Starlink mission advancing past 17, is expected to launch. We'll be bringing you that live here on our channel once we have a firm launch time. We're also waiting to see how testing continues with Starship SN10 and SN11. SN10 is currently sitting on Pad A, and it looks like we could be seeing a static fire as early as actually later today, which means test flight could just be a few days away. Now, the FAA investigation is currently underway for the failure of the Starship SN9, so we'll have to wait for that to be completed and SpaceX to receive approval for the launch of SN10. So again, we might be waiting on the FAA. But that's not a bad thing. These investigations are an important part of building a new rocket and new science. Yes, there's a lot of procedures that probably could be updated for these new types of vehicles and the speed of testing. Elon tweeted about that a couple days prior to the launch of SN9. But they're moving forward, and that's what's important. SN11 is completed in the high bay, and over the next couple of weeks, we should see it make its way out to Test Stand B to start its testing campaign. SpaceX spent this last week cleaning up the pad prior to the major polar vortex descending from us in Canada, and making sure that just the facility was safe, repairing any damage, and they poured actually a thicker layer on top of the current landing pad, just reinforcing it with full rebar across the board. And that's it for this week's update. I know it was a lot of information, so way to go for getting through it if you are still here. And before we end, make sure to hit that subscribe button, make sure you don't miss next week's episode, and smash the like button. It really does help YouTube share it out to more people so we can help share what's happening in the space industry. This is Zach with The Launchpad, signing off.